Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Everyday Arborist podcast. My name is Cam. This is episode 9. And today I have the honor and privilege of hosting Joe Rainwater from Martinsville, Indiana. And he currently works at Bluestone Tree Care, Tree Service. How do you
Yep,
guys entitle
Bluestone
that?
Tree in Bloomington, Indiana.
And you also are beginning a new venture with your own company called Rise Innovations. So everybody welcome Joe. And yeah, just really excited to have you on this week. I know of you through connections that I had when I worked at Chop Nashville with John Eric and Jared. And we even ran a Bluestone crane. And so you helped us tremendously our whole time there as we worked with, I think we called her Nancy.
Well, I
Uh,
named her Nancy at one point.
okay, so you passed down the name.
Yeah, that trip to Chop Nashville with John Eric and you guys is what inspired the training business that I have now started and I'm running, that Rise
Oh,
LLC.
that's a full circle moment right there. That's
It
awesome.
really is. And I got to visit with John Eric a couple weeks ago. I went and spent a couple days with them with their new PK65.
Yeah. Naya. Yeah, that was
Great
fun.
people. Yeah.
I think I shed a couple tears when we got Naya, man. That was such a sweet upgrade and a huge blessing. So that was fun. But but anyways, yeah, I think we also maybe ran into each other, I think at TCIA in Indianapolis. I was there that year and we got to hang out with you for a little bit in the lobby, I think.
Yeah, that was kind of our hometown TCIA.
Oh
I believe
yeah,
it's
yeah.
coming back. Yeah, because that's like my house. I live 33 minutes from Indianapolis International Airport, so like that's my
Okay.
backyard. I hope we do it
Yeah.
again there.
I think what this year is in St. Louis, I think.
Yeah, and St. Louis
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah, I
That's like
think
3 hours away from me, so pretty easy to get to. Yeah, they're a
but
good time. I love it's like seeing, old friends. It's like a family reunion for me every time I
yeah,
go to a TCIA.
totally. Well, Joe, we would love to hear a little bit about where you're from, maybe like a little bit of your childhood, things you were excited about then, and what got you to where you are now, maybe a little bit about your family. So, yeah, take it away.
Oh man. So I grew up in Brown County, Indiana, famous little town in Nashville. It's just a tourist trap. There's really not much there. It's kind of like a little bitty Gatlinburg. But got two little brothers. One's 3 years younger, one's 6 years younger, and we would just run around the woods, playing, climbing trees, doing all kinds of stuff. But what got me into tree climbing was I love physics. Like that was my major in college was physics.
Where
And
did you go to college?
Indiana University.
Okay.
So I was in school and I think it was the Arborist News or something. So we had an arborist on staff at the company I worked at, but I was the mechanic. And I would read through these Arborist News and Mock Adams, he's another Bloomington guy, but he had all these articles on rigging and
Hmm.
like zip lining pieces of trees out and things that I had not done before, not even seen. So I volunteered to work with our arborist uh, so I could play with ropes because to me it was just really cool. And I
Yeah.
also have an incredible fear of heights. This is one of my dumber things. So I've
The
always been
irony.
afraid of
Yeah.
heights. And I decided, you know what? If I climb trees, I'll get over it and I won't be afraid of heights anymore. Well, 30 years later, I still don't like heights. But I really like the gear, like the shiny
Yeah.
aluminum stuff and the ascenders. And so I still love to climb. And there's something kind of zen about when you tie into the crane and you're being
Mm.
hoisted up into the tree. It's the most relaxed I've ever been, is like the calm before the storm. And I
Yeah.
just I just fell in love with when I did my first crane job. I'm tied in and going up, and it's like this is what I want to do. So when the chance to come
Yeah.
and work for Bluestone Tree and be a climber and then crane operator for them happened, it's like, okay, instead of doing like 3 or 4 crane jobs a year, I can do crane jobs every day. That's awesome. So that's why
Yeah.
I moved over to Bluestone and fell in love with the knuckle booms. Because, you take something as cool as a crane and you put a chainsaw on the end of it, what could be better?
Yeah. Pretty wild. Going back to when you talked about like the fear of heights and the feeling of being in a saddle or with the gear, have you ever I've tried to explain this phenomena to people. Like, I don't like being on really high bridges with nothing attached to me and looking down, or like roller coasters, but something about being in a saddle, like, and feeling that tension, or being on a crane. It's like I feel like there's each time I move up, the floor just moves up with me. And so, like, when I'm doing a limb
Yeah.
walk really high, if I'm tied in, I feel completely different. But if you put me
It,
on like a bridge and have me look over, my fingers are like tingling. I'm like, nope, nope, nope.
my wife loves high bridges and overlooks and like going up into a building and like if they have the glass walkout thing. She loves that. I hate that.
Yeah,
Like I can't
yeah,
stand it. But if I'm top roped in, I'm good. And then something I had to do because I have an incredible fear of heights is I would go up as high as I've got to go to work, set a block or whatever, make a good reason to be up there. As one step down from that, I'm good. But up there is high.
yeah,
So I would just make myself go to the highest that I got to go, put some rigging, do whatever. And then I was good the rest of the tree after I'd gone up that high. But playing, the mind games, like it's just been an adventure dealing with that fear of heights, but falling in love with the industry.
yeah,
It's really been a trip.
yeah. That's awesome. So Bluestone, you said, is in Bloomington, Indiana, correct?
Yeah, it is an
Okay.
incredible business. They built the third knuckle boom. Well, there's a lot of discussion about it. So through Powfinger Tiffin, they built the third knuckle boom with a Mechano grapple saw on it. There were things before it, but Nancy
Yeah.
is widely recognized as the third truck, and
Man. Yeah.
so they were early adopters of the technology. And I actually have an email from Jared when he was going through the build process with Powfinger, and he emailed me the plans for it, and I'm like, man, that'll never replace climbers. I've still got the emails. It's great. I'll have to look them up sometime again. But we had this little discussion, and then I said, I'd love to see it when you get it built, because I didn't really believe in the idea. And
Yeah.
here we are, 9 years later, and yeah, it's not just a good idea, it's a great idea.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Believe it or not, with even with how old Nancy was at Chop, it was a huge contribution to the reason I moved to Nashville. So, like,
Oh,
my
sweet.
wife is from here, but I was doing tree work for 6 years in Kansas City, production side, and we used, I think the biggest crane we had was a lease crane there. It was like 60 ton that we would have out every now and then, but most of the stuff was traditional rigging and a lot of pruning. But I think when I started seeing the knuckle boom, this was 2021. So the knuckle boom had already been going for years now already, but at least when I started looking into it and being excited about, the idea of working with one, I found Chop Nashville and I reached out to John Eric, and my wife and I were like in this transition in life where we wanted to be closer to family because we're both from here. And so we were like, hey, why don't we move back to Nashville where we got married and see if John Eric, would have me work with him at Chop, and I get to work with the Knuckle Boom. And so, believe it or not, Nancy was like my introduction to Knuckle Booms, even though at her old age. So
Nice. Yeah,
it's really cool how that came about. But
that is. And so that was one of the first, and it was built on a 33 ton. And a lot of people don't understand that the metric cranes are labeled differently than US cranes. So if you have, say, a 40-ton crane in the United States, it can pick up 40 tons, but that's like inside the wheelbase of the truck. That's really close.
hmm,
A 40-ton metric crane isn't a weight rating, it's a torque rating. It can take 40 meter tons of torque. Think about your torque wrench when you're tightening your lug nuts. And you
hmm,
put 75 foot-pounds of torque on your lug nuts. Well, a metric crane is labeled in a torque rating that is 40 meter tons, which tells you more about what the crane can do than, oh, it can pick up 40 tons 3 foot away from it. That doesn't give you a formula to tell you what the reach is and what it can do at distance. So I
hmm,
really like the metric crane designation. It just tells you more what it can do. But that's why, say, Nancy, the 33 ton. You know, it was beeping with an 800-pound head on it at 85 feet away, but a 33-ton US crane, it can pick up 33 tons. Nancy would never pick up 33 tons. But that's the difference in the US and the European crane nomenclature. And a lot of
Yeah,
people don't really get that.
yeah, yeah. It's it's a pretty, I wouldn't say complicated. It's just a lot different than what we're used to traditionally. You know, before we recorded, we talked about like the difference of how OSHA and the construction world views cranes, and now with the technology of the grapple saw crane and what that is. So I would love to hear maybe what it was like starting out as. Did you start as like a crane trainee and then you had this evolution? How was it that's like starting that journey and then getting to where you are today?
Oh, well, with the stick booms as a climber, I saw jobs going on with cranes, and I was there and I was on the ground, and my buddy was the climber. But since I was around crane jobs, then of course I get a phone call, an acquaintance, and he just assumes that I'm like the crane guy because I've shared pictures of these crane jobs. And he calls me, he's like, "Man, I'm going to do my first crane job. Will you come help?" And so I'm like, "Yeah, I'll come help." So that's what you do. So I go over there, and he wants me to be the climber. And I'm like, "That's cool. I'll be the climber." Well, he didn't know that was the first crane removal where I was the climber. But I didn't really bluff my way into it. It just kind of happened naturally.
Yeah,
That's how it worked. But everything went great. It was one of those that it was just like clockwork. So I set slings, and he stayed at the tree cutting leads off. And
man,
so I would just ride up and set my slings and then burn down with my rope runner and then, pull my rope, hit cut, and then I'd ride up again. It was like the ideal job. And I was like, man, I want to do
man,
crane jobs every day for the
yeah.
rest of my life. I want them to all be like this. And then when I went to Bluestone, it was kind of a miracle how I got there. So
Hmm.
I don't know, had I mentioned I had a pretty bad work-related injury. I had an oak tree that was stone dead. They probably should have cut it down 5 years before they called me, all over
Hmm.
the roof of a house. I set the bucket truck up. It's real stressful. I got a brand new ground guy. It's his first day.
Wow.
And, he's rigging and, there was a lot of stress. So I had one guy that kind of knew what he was doing. I had one guy that it was his first day. And we rig all these dead tops out. You know how they are when they're swinging, it's throwing limbs and like it's dead stuff's coming off. Get
Yeah.
the whole tree down to a stub that we can flop. So all the pressure's off. I got complacent. I didn't have my guard up anymore because this job, we had kicked its butt. It had gone great with new help that didn't know what they were doing, you know. So I hop out of the bucket and I go to walk the catwalk over to the ladder and I got vertigo. First time in my life. I've never had vertigo, but maybe it was dehydration, maybe it was the heat, maybe it was the stress let down. I don't know, but I realized I was going to fall off that truck.
Oh,
And instead of fall, and it's only, it's like 8 foot off the ground.
yeah.
Stabilizers are all the way down on the bucket truck. I'm standing up on the toolboxes. It's like, I'll just jump because I've jumped off of roofs before. It doesn't hurt. So I jump off the bucket truck. What I didn't see was a metal post because you were looking straight down on a metal post. You can't see it. And
Hmm.
I took that metal post to my safety glasses, to my right uh, orbital socket, basically.
Hmm.
And so when I hit that, it didn't knock me out completely. It just kind of knocked me loopy because I remember going through the air and feeling my head go backwards and then hitting the ground backwards. And all I could think was, why did I hit the ground backwards? I jumped forwards looking at the ground. And it
Hmm.
took me a minute to kind of figure it out. And I realized, hey, I'm laying on my back. I'm bleeding. And I look down and, cover your ears, earmuffs. I can see the bottom of the tread of my shoe pointed at
Hmm.
me. And it's so I had broken my ankle, a compound fracture of the ankle, broken both
Uh,
wrists, and cracked my skull. But because of that injury, I couldn't work. Vermeer in Fishers, Indiana did free trainings and they came with lunch. Like, well, I'll go to a free training. So I take my walker
Yeah.
because I'm, I got one leg and no hands basically, but I can use a walker. And I
Hmm.
go into this training and there's one seat left in the whole place. I sit down next to this guy I've never met. I'm like, "Hi, I'm Joe. Who are you?" And start talking to him. And it's Jared Orn, the owner of Bluestone Tree. And
Wow.
I needed help because I had jobs sold. And so I talked him into working with me 2 days a week that summer.
Hmm.
And I think, just because of that injury, I met him. Then he built Nancy, and then I went to work for him. And
Wow.
so it changed my life in a very positive way. This really bad injury, that there was a lot I could get into. We could do a whole podcast on what it's like to be a guy that works with your body and has 7 kids,
Yeah.
and then you can't do anything for yourself. I couldn't
Yeah.
go upstairs to my own bedroom. I had a
Wow.
motorized wheelchair with the joystick, and I'd cruise it around the house. Like it was a huge change to go through. But then because of that, I was given this opportunity uh, to work at Bluestone Tree and work with knuckle boom cranes, and now I can cut a whole tree down without leaving the ground. I
Yeah.
use the remote control. I play a video game and I cut the tree down, and we've got great team there. They are fantastic. I've got an amazing log truck operator, uh, several. There's a whole bunch of them, but I'll cut a piece of a tree. I'll hand it to them in the air. They grab it with their grapple and they put it in the debris truck, and no human being ever touches it. And nobody left the ground. Nobody ran a chainsaw. So it's like, because of that injury, this is where I'm at. So I can't even be upset about that. It was rough to go through at the time, especially for my
Yeah.
wife. She's the one that had to put in the work, not me. I just laid around healing for the most part.
Man.
But
Yeah.
but
What
I
a
don't remember where we started, but that's how I got here.
wow. Like what sounds like an incredibly humbling journey, but like the way it seems like you received that miracle or blessing and the way you carry yourself is really cool. And I was listening to we talked about Sean Ryan right before this, but like he
Yeah,
always talks about how he's like, man, I don't even believe in coincidences anymore. And I would agree with him. Like it's so cool how you would sit next to Jared. I think you said his name
yeah,
was like, what are the odds? What
that
are
yeah,
the odds? So
infinite
cool.
odds. And now my wife and I always joke that I'll say I'm God's favorite. She'll say she's God's favorite. My theology says that there's enough room for everybody to be God's favorite, but we're
Yeah,
talking about me right now, so I'm God's
yeah,
favorite.
yeah. Isn't that so cool? It turns out we're all the apple of his eye. That's pretty neat.
Absolutely. Man, gives me chills just thinking about it.
That's awesome. When you talk about the crane, the grapple saw handing it off to the log mech, and if you're listening to this and you don't know what the log mech is, when I say that, I mean it's like a log truck with another grapple saw on it. That's what Joe was talking about. But for fun, I was thinking about on my way to work the other day. I was like, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT what it thinks it could do to replace us, and so I gave it a scenario where I said, uh, okay, AI, what would you do if you had a backyard tree with a steep slope and all the debris had to be taken out, cleaned up, and you couldn't, you know, touch anything to the ground as far as like large pieces, and you couldn't rig it or anything, and you were given a crane but no human involvement, and it gave a super elaborate answer. I'll have to maybe text it to you after this. It's kind of
Yeah.
a funny response, but it was like basically AI's answer was that it would deploy all these different kinds of smart drones that had like heat lasers and chainsaws on them that were capable of lifting 500 pounds, and they would have uh, what do they call it, like infrared to be able to like weigh out the wood, and then they would have ground drones that rake it all up. But I'm like, obviously that's not very
Give it
currently.
5 years.
Give
You
it
never
5 years.
know. Yeah.
It's interesting to think about, but then you think like the technology we're using as humans, that like we're getting extremely advanced with this, and there's like you said, there's the potential of jobs where debris doesn't even touch the ground, and if you
Yeah.
are not dynamic with the crane, you might just have a leaf blower at the end of the job that you end up using. It's pretty
That's how it
wild.
works on our jobs. Like if you don't make a mess, you don't have to clean it up. And my mom likes to remind me of this, but my third grade teacher, when she did her conference with my mom, the third grade teacher said, if he can find a job where he can make a mess and leave, he'll be successful. And here I am. My job now has been I'm teaching people how to run knuckle boom cranes. And so, me and the operator, we're there making a mess. We leave to go to the next job. The cleanup crew shows up. So it has been the dream. I am living
Yeah,
the dream. Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like a similar scenario when I was in my childhood, probably around that third grade time. I would I wouldn't be a very good mechanic because what I loved to do when I was a kid was that I dismantled things because I wanted to tinker, but like I never had the passion to put it back together. I just love dismantling. And so like I kind of feel like I'm along that lines as well, because as a tree guy, you view things, whether it be a removal or just like a delicate prune, you're doing essentially a dismantle, in both of those approaches, as far as
But to me, it's like a
technique or whatever.
puzzle, or the closest
Totally.
thing to defusing a bomb that we get in the civilian world, because we have stored
Uh
energy. We're dealing with, and somebody, Chat GPT could probably tell us how much stored energy there is just with the gravity and the mass of the tree. But you have all this stored energy, and you've got to bring that energy level down to zero safely
yeah.
without anybody getting hurt or not damaging property or the lawn or anything. And I love the challenge of it.
Yeah.
I, you know the whole industry. I love cabling, I love pruning. I've done tree injections. I've saved a ton of ash trees by doing injections. Like, you know there are so many components to arboriculture that I can find a job for anybody that wants to be outside in arboriculture, and it'll be not just a job that's transitional, that you're working until you find what you want to be when you grow up. No, this is a
Hmm.
career.
Yeah.
And my 50th birthday is the 4th of July. It's almost here.
Oh
And
yeah.
I don't feel like I'm slowing down. Like, I am more excited about the work now than I was 20 years ago,
That's
because the
so awesome.
technology is making it sustainable, uh, you know, for somebody in their 50s or 60s even. Uh, it's things are changing, and there's a
Yeah,
spot for everybody in it.
totally. Yeah. Um, man, I wanted to touch on something real quick about with you running the crane at Bluestone, but do you feel like you have a different connection with the guys on your crane crew than you would on like just a traditional crew? Like, you mentioned like a puzzle and a challenge. Like, I feel like there's I talked to with my friend Drew that I worked with when I was at CHOP of like, man, you almost feel like you're in this like specialized military group with each other and that you've been through war
Yeah.
because every day really running those cranes is you're kind of war gaming things. Do you feel that on your side?
Oh, there's definitely like a band of brothers thing, because you go through, and they used to happen more often. You'll have near misses. I don't accept those on my crew anymore, but a lot of the guys that I work with have been with me for years before this technology and our skill set matured to the point where, you know, now we can predict with a high percentage of success what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're brand new at something and you're dealing with this amount of energy, there can be weird things that happen and you didn't anticipate it. It's like if I teach a class at TCIA someday, it's going to be like, why did it do that? Because particularly with knuckle booms, you can put energy into the system, because it's not as simple as a single stick boom with a steel cable running down to the tree. You have the main, you have the jib. So if you main boom up, it doesn't, you've got a fishing pole with a fishing pole bolted to the end of it, grabbing a growing fishing pole with a root system.
Mm-hmm.
So when you main boom up, you're not just going up, you've pulled the tree to you. So when you cut it, it might jump off and come towards the crane. If your geometry is like this and you jib up, well, that's pulling the main boom down. That's pushing it away from you. So when you cut it, it may jump away from you. And if you're a climber
Mm-hmm.
in the tree, you don't want unexpected movement of that piece.
Yeah.
You want it to just float when you cut it.
Mm-hmm.
So those experiences that we went through have really built like this team because we've been through things that were not pleasant. And then of course there's just the long days.
Yeah.
It's a bid job and it's a 45-minute drive back to the shop. We don't want to come back for an hour tomorrow. We're gonna be raking with headlamps on. We're
Yeah.
going to set the crane up and we're going to shine lights down on us. And you go through those things and it gets to be more than just coworkers. Like, you're, you know each other.
Uh-huh.
And I really, that's the one thing I miss about starting my new business and going training is I miss my crew because they
Yeah.
are the best of the best. And I love it when the client comes out and says, it was like a ballet, it's like, nobody yells because we've got comms on our helmets.
Mm-hmm.
There's not profanity. Nobody throws a fit. If you're going to throw a temper tantrum, you're not well suited to
Yeah.
working with me. I don't believe in yelling in the workplace unless it is imminent danger. If somebody's going to be backed over by a truck, you yell.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're mature adults. We just
Mm-hmm.
do our jobs, and it's our job to make it look easy. The best review that I've gotten this year on Google is, and the guy told me before he left it, but he said, I have severe anxiety and I can't have anybody working at my house when I'm not watching because I am so worried something's going to happen.
Wow.
But I've seen you guys work, and this is the third time I've hired you, and I'm just I'm gonna head out of town. Like I'm gonna leave because I have zero stress when you're here. He's like, I feel bad that I'm missing seeing the equipment run and seeing you guys work, but I have
Hmm.
no anxiety. And that was the best compliment that I've gotten this year.
That is
Because,
awesome.
trees, every job we go to, there are people filming us. And because they're filming because they want the next fail video on YouTube. They want to
Yeah.
capture that tree going through the house. And
Yeah.
I want to be the biggest letdown for them ever. Except
Yeah.
that when the tree just lifts up and floats over the house and lands in the road, I want them to be excited about that, not a fail.
Yeah. No, that's so funny. And I've always thought of that same concept.
True, I talk about I want quiet rigging. If there's any yelling, it's going to be because it was so cool.
Yeah.
I want no drama picks. When that piece lifts off the tree, I want it to look like it grew there and it just now there's a gap between it and the stem, but no drama. And it's gotten to
Yeah.
the point now where like we don't talk about work at work because we got so many reps. It's gotten easy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
when our comms mess up because it's raining, you know, Will and I will just look at each other and he'll be like, and I'll be like, and that's where he cuts. And we've
Yeah.
got the right piece and he's cutting where I wanted him to cut and we didn't talk about it. And man,
Yep.
that's fun. When you finally
Yeah.
develop a crew like that, it's so much fun.
Totally. And like you said, you develop a passion too of wanting to see things come off perfectly. You memorize how to look at the lower and the main and the jib, and you're almost watching it as a human arm come out and grab the piece. And as the climber, you might have met Ryan and Jamie. I think you definitely met
Yeah, I
Jamie,
met
but
Jamie
then
for
Ryan.
sure. I think I
Okay,
met Ryan too.
okay, but I got to that point with Jamie and Ryan, and so did my friend Drew, where you almost felt like it was an extension of them. But like you said, it's there's that connection and that assurance that you have, and but you definitely develop a passion for watching the crane be almost perfect or make it the best you can. And I always love watching your stuff, or I don't know if you're familiar with Rion Rounds.
Oh yeah, Rion's
uh,
a friend. He's a good
like
dude.
he's got that same passion of I don't believe like everything's going to always be 100% perfect, but I think it's okay to strive for that,
Well,
and have a
every
passion
pick
for it.
is a practice for when it really matters. So there are no
Yeah.
throwaway picks. And I remind my guys of that. Like there's no throwaways
Hmm.
because there is going to be a time where we're called on to make a perfect pick and it's going to matter. And we want it to be perfect. And we actually
Yeah.
had that opportunity last year, I believe. Uh, so, Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, it's a decent sized college. There's the main street running through town is Third Street, and on campus there's this big greenhouse with plants that are priceless. There's all
Wow.
kinds of rare plants. Well, they had an ash tree, a very big ash tree, co-dominant, that somebody walked by it and heard a big pop, and the side towards the greenhouse settled. And they notified the arborist, not the like grounds or facilities guy, and he went and looked at it, and it was popping and moving towards the greenhouse. And this
Oh
is the
my
busiest
gosh.
street, right by a stoplight, with thousands of students walking by under the tree.
Oh
And so
man.
they got cop cars. They blocked the area off. They called us, and they said, "Whatever you're doing, quit. Come here now." And so I folded up the crane, and me and Will roll in, and the cop cars are blocking the road, and they back apart while I'm pulling up
The
and
Red
let me
Sea or
through.
something. Oh my
It was
gosh.
amazing. And so we're on the radios, and we're talking about where we're putting the spider lift and where we're putting the crane while we're pulling in. He sets up the spider lift, I set up the crane, and I swear it was the most perfect tree removal that I have ever done, because we had practiced so many
Oh
picks.
man.
And then we have hundreds and hundreds of people watching, and we've got to do it pretty quick. And like we shot a rope in it and tried to tie it together, but it was still wanting to settle. And
What
I wanted
diameters
way
are you talking about? Like,
probably two 40-inch stems. So,
oh,
pretty good size, and they're really tall.
chunkers. Yeah.
Yeah, I can send you a picture later, but
Wow.
like she was big. And then every pick was exactly the weight that we shot for. And then,
Man.
once we got the hazard out of it, it was like it was a letdown to
Just
do
another
boring
day.
tree work.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, we practiced for years so that when it mattered, we made it look easy. And
Man.
I loved that job. That was so much fun.
How big is that greenhouse? I've never seen that campus. Is it a pretty large like
Yeah,
area or?
I've never been through it. Even though I went to the school, I never went to the greenhouse. I was a physics
Yeah.
major. I wasn't into plants at that time. But I do know they have some plants in there that, like, every however many years, like the flower smells like a decomposing body, and that's the last thing that I remember hearing about it. But yeah,
Oh
it was going to go, I don't know how destroyed, because it would have been across 3 lanes of traffic before it hit it, but it would have left a mark. And that was,
man.
I was glad they called us, because it was going. And I'm sure Will deserves the credit for getting a rope set in it and getting it pulled together. Simon, our sales guy, gets the credit for
Wow.
recognizing what resources we needed to allocate and to let us know it was important. So it was a good team effort, but it was fun.
Yeah. That's awesome. And you guys, was it you that shared one that you had recently that was another like failure at the base and it was like imminent towards the neighbor's house? Was that you guys?
We've
And you
had
like,
we've done a lot of those lately.
okay.
Um, yeah, I've only ever lost my temper once on a job, and it was an ash tree. Uh, and you know how crispy ash trees get, and
Uh-huh.
they get gross. And
Yeah.
the homeowner realized that it was fracturing and failing, and it had splits going all through it. And they had wrapped it with log chains, and then the log chains pulled tight because it was starting to come apart. And
Yeah.
we start working on it, and I'm worried if I slam the truck door too hard, it's falling over. And forget what the sales guy was talking about, but he was asking me a price to do a different tree. And I was like, I can't give you anything right now. I have to do this tree that wants to kill everybody. So I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
uh, it does require your attention, when you're on some of those.
Man. A little side tangent, by the way. You were talking about how you were a physics major, and my wife she teaches middle school science, and I guess this is a tangent on science in general. I'm like, I feel like we should be teaching or at least introducing kids to the concept of a career like this, like early on, because when I was at CHOP working with a knuckle boom every day, and my wife would go home and share things that she was teaching in class, I'm like, man, if I could only like tell somebody at that age that this is a possibility for them to get to. And I think we're going to kind of allude to that here soon, but yeah, that's a little tangent. I'm like, man, we got to get kids excited about this whole thing,
Well,
because
and when we're
it's really
teaching, instead
awesome.
of it just being a dry thing with like a math problem, like, man, if I had known it applied in the world, I would have paid way more attention the first go round. Uh, and yeah, exactly. Our kids are all homeschooled. So my wife she's got her teaching degree from Indiana University, but then we started having
Yeah,
kids. So she's homeschooled them all. And you can't, in the public school situation, customize the curriculum to each kid to get them excited about
yeah,
it. So I understand it's a very lofty goal to do that, but when given the chance, we could make it really interesting well, to me, crane math.
yeah,
I get excited about it.
totally. Did your kids ever do like a co-op thing, or were they like homeschool, like 100 through and through?
Yeah, homeschooled through and through. The co-ops never really worked for us because with seven of them, I don't know, it was just too much. So
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah,
my wife just did it all. Like she's incredible. She's a
yeah,
superhero. She
that's
works the long
awesome.
hours. I just cut down hazard trees, but she puts in the work.
Now, before we venture on from family, real quick, you mentioned, but I think before we started recording, that you guys live in a cabin that did you guys build it, or did a client in the
Oh
past?
no.
Like, so how
Somebody
did
in
this?
1844 built this cabin. I'll have to
Oh
send
my
you pictures
gosh,
of it. So one of my clients, she was a tough lady. First female college professor at two different universities. Uh,
man.
Professional protester since 1978 because that's when she sued the university she was working for and settled out of
Oh,
court. So she had just been protesting since 1978. But she would
wow.
have me up to this cabin every couple of years to cut the driveway open and do the required pruning because it's a historic landmark. And when she turned 90, she called me and she said, "I'm 90 and I can't take care of the farm anymore. You're going to buy it from me." And I cut trees. I'm not a business owner. I'm just an employee, and I have seven kids and a mortgage. It's like, Sarah, I really appreciate you thinking of us, but we can't afford it. And so then about 6 weeks later, she calls back, and the price is half of what the appraisal. And she's like, "Okay, this is a great price. You should buy it." And so we did the math, and we thought about it. It's like, you know what? I'm not into taking advantage of anybody. She is willing to give me this deal so that my family could live there.
Hmm.
I can't afford to do the work required because it was like a park. No running water, no electricity, two-hole
Wow.
outhouse, registered historic landmark. It's like we can't live there. Nobody's lived there since the 30s. So I turned it down, even though it's half the appraised value. Then she called back again and she said, "I'm donating the money to the IU School of Music in my sister's name for a scholarship. This is the least I can take." And it was an extremely good deal. Uh, but it wasn't in spirit with what she wanted because if I bought it, I imagined, we could come on hard times and have to sell it because it wouldn't be a home because we couldn't afford to make it a home.
Hmm.
So she calls back 6 weeks later and she says, "There's a 1-for-1 matching grant right now. I can sell it to you for half of the half that I offered it to you before." And
Oh
I was like,
man.
"Yes, ma'am." And so we bought that house. And it was quite an ordeal working a full-time job and rehabbing it. And, we sold the place we were living in, but it's been a labor of love. And the kids now,
Man.
it's a log cabin in the middle of 57 acres. We can't see our neighbors. The kids can run around. They have a good time. Like that's home now. I'll have to send you pictures. And being a tree
Yeah.
guy, the logs are like, they're 32 inches wide. So four logs to do a single story. It's two-story, but four logs got it over 8 foot, and I believe they're chestnut. I thought they were tulip
Oh my
poplar because that's the
gosh.
biggest thing that we get around here is tulip poplar. But I've had several people look at it and tell me it's chestnut. But it was just an amazing experience, and
Wow.
I don't know if we were talking about this before or during, but like I just feel like I'm God's favorite. And my wife jokes
Man,
that she's God's favorite. And our personal beliefs are, with the God that we know, everybody's his favorite. But right now we're talking about me. So I'm God's favorite.
man, that is so amazing. What year did you guys like move in and start that whole process?
So we bought that place 2016. We moved in 2018. I'm really bad with dates and years, but I believe that's accurate.
Man, that is so cool. I'm excited to see pictures of that. I mean,
Oh yeah,
I'm
I'll
not
send you
I'm
some
not sure if
pictures.
I've ever uh seen a chestnut log of that size, even on a picture. Like you
Yeah,
I don't even think
none of us
Google
have
Images can recognize that, you
because
know.
chestnut blight destroyed them. It's kind of like the emerald ash borer destroyed the ash, and uh,
Mm,
Dutch elm disease destroyed the elms. Like we have these invasives that have come through and just annihilated types of trees. But yeah, I would love to learn more about dendrochronology, where you do a core sample of the log and you look at the rings and you can put a date to when they grew. But it's kind of
wow.
it's not something that I've had time to play with yet, but I think that would be really cool to date the logs because it's a registered historic landmark. It's all on the Federal Registry. You can see the history of it, but it's dated to 1844. And it's the
Wow.
last surviving farm in Indiana with all of its outbuildings in their original location. So it's cool. It, it's a it's really a blessing to have a place like that.
Man, it'd be funny like you get to heaven, you're like, "Hey, Jesus, I'm so glad I'm here." But, do you think when you're going to start the new heavens, new earth thing, maybe you could just transplant that little cabin to the new
Yes.
one?
Yeah. Man, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
Oh
I'll send you
man.
pictures.
Man, speaking of like old versions of trees, I just thought of this. I saw the other day somebody shared a picture of what eastern white pine looked like when it was like really mature. I mean, and it had pictures of guys standing next to it. I've never seen white pines that big, and like the wood, the bark looked different. I mean, it was huge.
Really?
These must have been like 5, 6 feet across. It looked like from the picture. But
Wow.
I was like,
Man,
and
those would
that
be
that was
heavy.
up northeast. But I'm like, oh my gosh,
My scariest experiences in as a crane operator have been white pines.
yeah.
Those
I was
things,
just
man.
about to say that. Yeah.
Oh, the limbwood is so heavy and
Mm-hmm.
they're so brittle. They turn a little bit and you have big things, big limbs breaking off and
Yeah.
dropping. And people call us because the tree's over the house. So yeah, I've had some learning experiences early with white pines.
Yeah, those were always my least favorite to remove with a knuckle boom because you get there and there's 500 limbs on them, and
Yep.
you're like, well, we either, if we have room on the ground, we're going to get a bucket and just bomb this thing until it's a pole, or just have to, because sometimes it's not always that these limbs are small too. Some of those white pine limbs can come off and they're girthy, and
Yeah,
so
they
you
are.
can't even bomb them, and you definitely don't want to rig them, and so then
Sling picks. Yeah,
it's like,
get the truck set up real close so you have good capacity
yeah.
and you sling pick them.
And
I
then
almost
even with
never
like a
put the cutting head on.
with like a log with just like one or two back limbs, those are heavy enough to really make it a much more dynamic moment than you thought of.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, my some of my scariest experiences as a crane operator were white pines because we
Mm,
use the greenwood log chart out in the field a lot when we're estimating. And on eastern white pine, doubling it's not enough. The limb wood can weigh more than the log, and that's the only kind
mm.
of tree that's the case. Every other kind of tree I work with, the limbs will weigh less than the log. White pine, the limbs are going to weigh more than the log, and it's more than double. So I respect those trees, and they're so brittle.
Yeah, have a lead just shear off. That was always like an awful feeling too, even when slinging, but especially if we had the grapple on, you would just be working, whistling, thinking you're having a great day, and the next thing you know, a 4 foot lead just
Yeah.
snaps off and flies to the ground.
Yep. If you're lucky,
Yeah,
yeah. I
man.
prefer so I've been doing a lot of traveling with the new company, and
Yeah.
man, I love the Georgia pines. At least there's space between the limbs. They're heavy
Yeah,
and they're tall, but there's room for a grapple saw. Uh,
man.
you almost can't grapple saw a white pine, but these Georgia pines, you can cut those down.
Yeah. Um, when you mentioned the new company, I wanted to get into that because we talked about passion for uh, crane picks, passion for doing things really well, and seeing things almost be perfect on a job site. But you've also touched on your passion for the industry, your passion for seeing guys and yourself have longevity, and you getting into a whole new decade here soon. Like you have a passion to continue what you're doing, and you've said like you're just getting started. And so I'd love to have you introduce like Rise Innovations, what it is, what kind of your ethos is behind it, what your hopes are for the future, and then maybe hopefully there's people listening to this that maybe are just getting into a crane or have for a couple years but want to take maybe a more intentional step. So yeah, maybe
Yeah.
have at it. Just yeah, give
So
us what Rise is.
yeah, so I can't remember what year it was, but the crane remote, the Scanrico remote with the 8 paddles, it was separate from the chainsaw remote. The chainsaw remote's a 3-button remote with a belt clip. So when I first started running the crane, you'd have to grapple closed with 8 on your remote and then push one of 3 buttons on your belt. Thing is, that thing, like you're wearing a winter coat, got your Carhartt coat on, you can't see it, it's under your belt, and you're feeling to
Yeah.
feel which button you're pushing. I thought that was a terrible idea. So I started doing electrical tape, and I electrical taped the remote up onto the crane remote. And Rick Hughes, I was out at Pete the Crane Man's Crane School in Pennsylvania, and Rick Hughes showed me how he had drilled out a hole for the belt clip to slide into, and that was cool too. It was a little rattly, but I cut an ash top over a house. Well, I meant to cut it. I hit tilt down instead. And when I hit tilt down, it just broke, of course, and it just shattered into 8,000 pieces, threw it at the house. And I
uh,
was like, man, that can't happen again. These buttons need to be in the same place. Because what had happened is the AAA batteries in the chainsaw remote had gone dead. I had pulled it out of the electrical tape, changed the batteries, taped it back on, and I had taped it back on like a half inch to the left of or to the right of where it should have been. So the
oh
muscle
man.
memory was wrong, and I pushed the wrong button. So I went home, and I've got a little machine shop at home, and me and Amelia, my daughter who's starting college next month, uh, we make this bracket, and I put it on the remote, and I'm like, man, that works pretty good. So I make 10 of them. I make an Instagram post about it, and people bought those 10 really quick.
Wow.
And since then, I think I've shipped around 700 of them.
Oh,
So a lot of people are running cranes with my bracket on it. Uh, and
wow.
because of
That is
that, I've
so
gotten to
cool.
know a lot of people. And I know there are a lot of trucks out there. And really, the missing link when we started running knuckle booms was the crane manufacturer. They are amazing at building a crane, and they don't cut trees down. They don't really, like, that's not what they do. They build cranes, and they can show you how to set them up. They can show you how to tear them down. They can show you how to read a load chart, but they don't understand how like wood fibers react. The difference between a hickory tree and a sweet gum tree when you're running the mechanil on it, or really estimating wood weights. That's not what they're trained to do. That's not their passion.
Hmm.
Well, there's this intersection of loving trees and loving machinery where like I'm camped out and this is what I love. So I realized on that trip to Nashville, because when we sold Nancy to Chop Nashville, I went with it for a week. And by the
Wow.
end of that week, I borrowed Jared's climbing gear because he had had some sort of thing done lately and he wasn't ready to climb. So I gave John Eric the remote and I said, man, if I'm not comfortable being a climber for you, I can't in good conscience leave this truck with you because I don't want to see anybody hurt.
Yeah.
So by the end of the week, I got up in the tree and I was setting slings, I was cutting while John Eric ran the remote. And I loved that experience. I learned more having to articulate the skills that I just in intuitively had or had through experience, when you have to articulate that to another human being, it solidifies it in your brain better. And you have a
Hmm.
deeper understanding when people ask you questions, because you can be a great operator and things are beautiful and you move the crane like it's an extension of your hand, but being able to explain how that worked to another person, that's like a next level. And I learned so much about how I ran the crane teaching John Eric and Jared that I was like, man, I love that. Like it doubled my skills as an operator. Just a
Man,
week of
that's awesome.
training made me so much more competent and confident in my skills that I love teaching. So then we bought a second crane at Bluestone, and I trained an operator for that, and I really enjoyed that. And uh, he ended up becoming a city arborist. He took a different position in a different city. Now he's a city arborist in Lafayette. But
Hmm.
so then another guy that had worked with me for years, Nate, who is incredible. It's like Nate's ready, so it it's a funny story. He kind of taught me to run the crane, and I kind of taught him to run the crane because he was 16 when I started at Bluestone, and he was there with me on some jobs, and he knew more about the crane when I started than I knew because I didn't know anything. And so it kind of came full circle. But I
Yeah.
really found that I loved teaching people, and by teaching, it makes my skills even better. So
Hmm.
and I see videos online, and I'm like, that's scary. I would never post that video. That's a pick done wrong. Like, I want to see things represented best practice,
Hmm.
because we're kind of in an unregulated fringe area. Like, you know, when they write the rules, nobody wrote the rules for a crane with a chainsaw and a hand on the end of the boom. Like, so those rules are going to be written, and they're going to be written in response to the bad things that happen, not the good things.
Hmm.
So I got excited about the cranes, and I want people to be successful with them. I want people to buy these cranes and knock it out of the park. When we go do a hazard tree, I feel like I might have saved somebody else's life because somebody else, without the training and without the right tools, might have tried to do this and might have got seriously injured. So when we show up with the right tools and the right training, like, we've saved somebody's life. Uh, and if I can go out and I can train people how to run the crane safely, I'm going to affect more lives than I can if I'm just on one job site.
Yeah.
And the people that have sold trucks and talked bad about them, because there was nobody there to teach them the right way to do it and what the crane was capable of and what the best practices were, because that didn't exist. It's an emerging technology. So I feel like I'm in this spot where I've got the reps. I've been out in the field. I learned it the hard way, and I've refined these processes. And now I want to share that with people. And it is so much fun when somebody gets it. You're instructing
Yeah.
them, and like it wasn't today. Yesterday, the guy I'm working with right now, uh, in Paducah, Kentucky, did his first sling pick with a crane, and it was magic. That thing just floated there. Like there was no
Man,
movement whatsoever. It's his first pick ever. And I was like, I wish my first pick had looked like that, because it did not look that good.
how do
Because,
you feel like
there's,
his
there's,
reaction was? Was it like did he feel like it was a pretty special moment?
I think he felt even taller than he is, and he's already tall.
Oh
It's like,
man.
because in every pick, I think we did about six more sling picks today, and each one was perfect. I recorded one of them and posted it to my story, and it was just like, man, I wish everything could go like that.
Yeah.
So I've been pretty booked. I'll leave here and I'll spend a couple days at home, and then I'll be going to Virginia. I was in Michigan, North Carolina, South Carolina. Like it's been exciting. I'm meeting the best people, and tree people. The vast majority of people in this industry are incredible people.
Yeah,
And
it
like
is so cool.
it's been so much fun to meet them and build a relationship with them. And I just love it. Everything about it. The humidity was pretty rough today, but I still loved it.
Well, yeah, I imagine is it pretty similar in Indiana, like
Yeah.
humidity and heat wise? Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty
man.
rough. Nothing like so we did a lot of storm chasing last year. We went to Houston for Hurricane Beryl. That was the worst heat humidity I have ever encountered in my
Oh
life.
my
Like
gosh, yeah.
I can teach several classes on heat related illness after what I've learned. I've got a buddy he's a doctor in the army, and he kind of coached me with some things we could do for the crew to keep them from not making it. Like it was that hot. Right
Wow,
after that hurricane, it was bad. And then we went from there to Omaha, Nebraska, and I thought, oh, it'll be cool in Omaha. No, it was like 90 degrees and 100% humidity there. And uh, after that, we went to Augusta. We spent a month in Augusta doing storm work there, and
man.
like we got a lot of reps quick on
Yeah,
the storm trees last year.
you know, when you say storm chasing, it kind of makes me think of like, in some way, it seems like recently in Indiana, you guys haven't had to chase much because the storm comes to you guys. I mean, it just over and over again, that area just gets walked.
Yeah. So last year, June 25th. We had a storm that had us working. We worked 6 weeks, 7 days a week with only the 4th of July off. And we had to because like there was so many trees on people's houses. And even though there was a bunch of people from out of town, like people waited 6 weeks to get trees off their house. And that's no way to live, man. You got to get the tree off the roof before you can start putting things back together.
Hmm.
And it was a bad storm. And then we had tornadoes last month. So we worked
Yeah,
some Saturdays and Sundays for that. But knuckle booms are really the perfect tool for these storm trees because
yeah,
they're so quick to set up, and you can simplify the equation with the saw before you go to slings. So you can take all the non-load bearing weight off the tree and off the roof, and get it to where it's a simple thing to rig so that it's safe and lighter, and then you'll pick that last piece on rope slings traditionally. And man, it's an art form. I love it.
hmm. Yeah. It's like you know how they say like tree work is like an art and a science, but like knuckle booms is the ultimate culmination of that, like the
Yeah,
peak,
but
you know.
I want to make it more science and less art. I want to get this down to a teachable science that's not just based on feel. Now there are some amazing operators way better than me, like light years better than me, but they can't teach it to somebody.
Hmm.
And my goal is to find people that become better operators than me if I can just give them a head start. If I can get them safe and efficient at the beginning and then they've got that natural ability to run with, man, I'm excited when somebody's a better operator than me. And if I go and I teach a class and at the end of the third day I'm like, dude, you're better than me. That would be the best compliment ever because I just want to give
Man.
people a boost. Just give them a head start and let them be successful.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I think that's, I mean, where you'll see success more and more with where you're at, and that was cool. I always appreciated that about John Eric and Jamie. You know, they have three guys who, you know, Jamie is no longer there, but you know, he's still close around us. But uh, John Eric, I think, trained Jamie, then Jamie trained Ryan, and now Ryan is at, you know, when I was there, he was an incredible operator, and so that's really cool how you can kind of pass that down. But I guess I do want to touch on too. What does it typically look like for someone to have you come to their company? Is it a certain amount of days that you have allotted? What would that look
Yep.
like if someone reached out to you?
So most of my trainings are 3 day training. So I'll come in and the first half day we will focus on the mechanics of the truck. So we're going to do a thorough inspection. We're going to make sure that it's been greased properly. We're going to make sure all the safeties work properly. We're going to make sure that it's safe to run because I have encountered cranes that uh, I'll just say it, the safeties were bypassed. The beeper that you heard on Nancy that would beep and then it would go solid tone when you hit 100%, not functional intentionally. and the computer's ability to disengage the hydraulics and prevent lifting over 100% was bypassed.
Hmm.
So that was a crane that was not safe to operate, but because we spend the first half day going through explaining how it works, why we grease this the way we do, these are the safety devices that are engineered into it. When you're setting up the crane, these are the things that are daily inspection items. These are things that are monthly inspection items. We caught those issues before we trained on it, and we were able
Hmm.
to resolve them. So that first half day is all, and some guys are very mechanically inclined and do their own repairs and really like that. Some people just want the bare minimum because they're going to send it off to get worked on. But if you're going to run these cranes and you're going to do storm work or really any work, you need to be able to do basic repairs and you need to
Yeah.
be able to do your own safety inspection before you fly it. So that first half day is very mechanical. Then the second half day, I ask them if they can find us, like, is there a tree on your property? Is there a tree on family's property with nothing under it that, you could flop it, but we want a tree that's safe for you to cut down, that if you drop a piece, if it's got two tops like this and you grab one and your chainsaw cuts both and the second one just goes straight down, that it doesn't stick in a roof, because
Yeah.
I've done that. I've been that guy. Uh, we want an easy tree to practice on. Day two, let's go to a job. Let's go because we solve problems in the real world. So we'll go to one of your jobs, we'll set the crane up, and I'll walk you through an efficient setup. Like, where should you put the truck? Where should you land the debris? Calculating the wood weights, you know, how I would work the tree down in the safest way for the boom of the truck, so that you're not bumping your hydraulic fittings up against the tree or breaking the hoses off, and what size pieces to take. And so that first or that second day, the trainee will run 20 minutes, I'll run 5 minutes. And then they'll run 20 minutes, I'll run 5 minutes. And we trade the remote back and forth.
Hmm.
And it gives them a chance to digest. And then as they watch me run the crane, they'll see me do something that I probably didn't even think about explaining to them yet. But they'll see it and they'll say, well, why did you rotate the head when you did that? Or why did you grab it that way? And then I have to explain it. And then by the third day, they should be pretty sufficient to where I want them on the remote all day. It's like graduation day. I'm not going to take a turn unless they need a break. I I want them to run the crane, and I want to just kind of coach them a little bit and watch for best practices. And I'm there to make sure they don't do anything that will, cause injury to people, property, or the machine itself. But let them learn. And it's been really good. Three seems to be adequate. I've done a couple of 2-day trainings that when we were done, we weren't done. Uh, and then after 3 days, it's almost like they need to run the crane for 6 months before they have me back, because you've got to chew on that, you've got to digest it, and you've got to come up with the questions to ask. Because when you're brand new, you don't even know what questions, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll do a repeat training, and I'm actually really excited. I've got one coming up in a couple weeks that's for a guy that's been running his crane for 3 years. I can't wait for that challenge because he's been doing it 3 years. He's good.
Hmm.
And I want to see what I have to offer there. And even just a fresh perspective, there's going to be value in it. But that's going to be fun because we're going to go right into like the real work. But I love walking up from ground zero too. But that one's going to be a challenge because single operator 3 years. Like, I'm not just going to walk in and say, well, this is how you turn it on and this is how you set it up and have them be impressed. So I'm excited about that challenge. I want to go to the next level on the training
Man,
with that one. It's going to be good.
that's awesome. Yeah, you'll have to share that on your stories. I'll be interested to see how that goes if you learn anything new on that. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
it's going to be
awesome.
fun.
Well, hey, if anybody's listening, I'll tag Joe and Rise Innovations in like Instagram or YouTube. So you guys feel free, if you're listening, guys or girls, feel free to reach out to Joe if you have any questions. And I'm sure he would love to kind of help you on your journey, whatever it may be. So that's awesome. Anything else you'd like to kind of plug for Rise or things you're thinking about for that?
No, I feel like I should give a little shout out. I had a girl on my crew this year who was fantastic. She is like 5 foot tall,
Oh
and we
man,
had her
that's
running a
awesome.
log mech, and she was awesome. But she turned in her 2 weeks notice last week,
Ah,
and is actually leaving the industry. But Taylor, it was fantastic to work with you, and I think that you've got the bug for it. And I don't think you'll last in a cubicle. I think you're going to be back outside with us soon because you are too good at this work to go inside. But yeah,
man.
man, it's been a pleasure. I love talking about cranes. I love trees. So thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, you guys definitely check out Joe online for Rise. And before we go, I'd love to get three maybe quick fire questions in for you.
All right.
So the first one, if you're not able or allowed to answer, we can just skip. But is your experience at the location in Augusta, Georgia? Did you have any unique experiences there that were like memorable, like a certain tree or a certain task you had to do?
Yeah, there was one that was the tallest tree that we have ever done. And because those pines get real tall, and we had to zip line out the first 8 or 10 pieces because a 200-foot rope, you couldn't rig anything out and get it to the ground. And
Man,
I believe I posted a video of running one out to where there was a historic retaining wall and a small stream at the base of the tree, and we weren't allowed to tear it up or any of the azalea plants. And so I rigged this out, and you've never seen so much smoke come off of a rope because a 200, I mean, it's a 100-foot run, and I get it stopped. And we knew we didn't have enough rope to get it to the ground, but we knew we could slow it down. And so my
oh
gloves,
man,
like the ropes melted into my gloves, the porter app was smoking, and I got it stopped, and it's like 30 foot off the ground, and I just, you just got to let go. But hey, we didn't tear
wow,
anything up historic. We spent a month at that location. uh, it was fun. That was a
man.
historic opportunity there in Augusta, Georgia.
That is so cool. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to share that for a really, really long time. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it was a very, very cool experience.
That's awesome. The second question I have is you shared a picture video. This must have been a couple weeks ago. Was it a like ferry or boat that you had set up that you were hauling logs? I'd love to hear about this
Yeah.
experience.
Lake houses are the hardest places to work, and a very uh, it's a high rent neighborhood. This lake where a tornado went right down the middle of the lake and destroyed a lot
Wow.
of homes. And I go way back. I've got history with these people because I worked before I was full time climbing trees and all that. I worked at a landscaping operation. And I was their mechanic. I saw these properties, got to know these people. You know, it's like, and they were just destroyed. But there is no crane that will go on these driveways. There is. I wouldn't drive a knuckle boom down them. I wouldn't drive a stick boom down them. Like there is no crane access. So some of the
Yeah.
jobs we had to do it old school, and we had to cut by hand and load stuff on a barge and haul it out. And the one nice thing was when the barge got to the dock, we had backed the log truck down the boat ramp, and that log mech was able to grab stuff off the
Oh
pontoon
man.
and load it. But yeah, that one was interesting. And not all wood floats. Uh, I forget exactly the numbers, but the density of water, it's like 46 pounds per cubic foot, something like that. 49.
Wow.
I can't remember. I've slept since then, but so oak sinks, tulip poplar floats. So we had to fasten
Wow.
barrels. We fastened barrels to the oak trees to float the logs out to the dock because a bunch of them had fallen in the water. So we ratchet strapped barrels to them and then cut them loose. And it was normally a 5 minute run to the boat ramp was an hour with 5 gallons of gas to drag. It was half an oak tree, but we drug it all the way up there. It was a good time. But
Was this
we
the
embraced those
client?
challenges. What's that?
Was this the client's boat and like
No,
his idea, or who did the
no.
barge and who
I've
did the
done this
barrels?
before. So my
Okay.
former employer, when I was their tree climber, we had bought this. It's so funny. We had bought this utility pontoon boat for a job 9 years ago. and I did the job with it, and it worked great. It had been sitting since I used it before I came to Bluestone. And I called them up and I said, "Hey, I need the boat." And so they got it running, changed the steering cables, did all the work they needed to, and then and met me out there. And so this boat, I've got pictures I can show you. I had hair the last time I was on the boat, and and I wasn't gray even.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, I've
I
got
you know
pictures of oak on it then and oak on it now.
the chances of you having like on the ready being able to call somebody, then the boat being available, then being able to get the boat to that job, like I'm starting to believe that you are God's favorite person.
Dude, I feel like it every day. I feel like it. Like it's just too good to be true. But what
Oh
was neat
man.
about this is like nobody else wanted this work
Huh.
because like it was terrible access. Like if you were to go up to the road, it was like climbing 10 flights of stairs.
Yeah.
And there you're not getting even a mini skid won't come down the hill. Like there was nothing you could do. I wanted a helicopter, and I really think we could have done a bunch of work with a helicopter, but I got shut down on that,
have you
unfortunately.
ever
But this was my chance.
have you ever connected with somebody who does that work or
So Jared, the one of the owners of Bluestone, he started with helicopter logging out west. He was on
oh
Axeman.
man.
He was down in the woods with the pink fuzzy thing, waving down the helicopter and setting chokers. So he's my
Man.
connection to helicopters, and I wanted it. And he told me if we could sell like 25 jobs, we'd get a helicopter. And we didn't do 25, so no
Yeah.
helicopter for me.
Is that it's a quick release device that's mounted to that cable, right? Like to where if they, get to a certain
They can let
spot
go
to
at any time. Yeah.
wow.
This was the perfect application, though, because everything could have been flown out over the water and to a farmer's field without crossing a public road or a residence. Like, I wanted it so bad, but that's the one thing. I want to do helicopter work.
Man. Yeah, I need to find somebody to have on the pod, whether it's Jared or like I know a lot of Aussie guys that not personally,
Yeah.
but know of them
I see him
that
on,
that
I follow a bunch of them on Instagram. Yeah.
yeah. And it's either Aussie or like I know there's a lot of land in New
Kiwis, a
Zealand
lot of
that's
New
like
Zealand. Yeah.
a lot of the Kiwi guys, and there's like historic land that, and I don't want to misquote them or say it wrong, but basically it's land that they don't want disturbed at any form. And,
Yeah.
it's cool that those guys are doing that down there. So maybe if I could, some way link up with them. And I think
Yeah.
maybe a few people in Europe or I don't know
Well,
if they're getting into it a
there
little
was a
bit, but
big job, I believe, in California that happened just lately that a bunch of, climbers that we both follow, I'm sure, on Instagram did, and maybe you can hook up
hmm,
with one of them. But to me,
yeah,
that's the next level of crane work because they'll go through and pre-rig. You'll estimate the weights and you'll get slings set where you want it for those cuts, and you'll have it marked where you're going to cut, and you'll go as far as, cut halfway through, and then the helicopter comes, you hook the sling, they pull up, and then you finish your cut because time is money. Like it's an art. So everything's pre-engineered the day before or
yeah.
days before to know the weights and know what the helicopter like. I don't know much about it, but yeah, it'd be fun. I'd get back in the tree for that. I'd climb for that.
It's like it just every part of it when you watch it. I mean, you know it's safe or like it looks safe because the individuals have like a rapport and you watch them do all the prep in these videos. But then everything when it comes off, you're like, it just seems like so
It's so dynamic.
dynamic and backwards from what you think of a crane. But like
Yeah,
from what I've heard, explanation wise, is like it almost needs to instead of go up, like it's got to be that helicopter going forward and get dumped off the side, and then
yeah,
that piece kind of chase the crane almost or the helicopter. That's a
yeah. It's an air
wild,
crane. Yeah, man, it's cool. This
so
industry has
crazy.
so much going on.
It's awesome. Well, Joe, I got last question here. The quick fire that we do, I try to do at least on every episode. Do you have a favorite tree that you could think of?
Redbud. I love redwood
Oh, little
trees.
eastern redbud.
Yeah, so they're not a lot to look at really, but they're the first thing to bud out and those or to bloom, and they get those blooms on the trunk like, and they're also tough. So I had a
Mm-hmm.
red bud at my last property that a tree fell on and bent the thing over to the ground, and it was still kicking. Man, it's like me. I keep getting beat up. I get a little uglier, but I'm still going and still blooming out early in the season. Like
Yeah.
I just and they're never a problem. You've never seen a redbud tree get big enough to kill a house.
Uh-huh.
Like they're just a very uh they're not flashy like a dogwood, but they're just my kind of tree. You know,
Yeah. That is
there's something
awesome.
special about them to me.
Yeah, that's really cool. And they've got cultivars too, like the Rising Sun that has like the different gradients on the leaves, and I mean
Oh, I've not seen
they put on
that.
a show. Yeah, I think it's called
Yeah,
Rising Sun, and there's a bunch of different ones, but they've kind of fine-tuned the leaf to have some show to it. So it's getting up
nice,
there on the fandom for people, I think. So that's
fantastic. Yeah,
awesome.
that's my favorite, no question.
So cool. Well, Joe, I so appreciate your time, and I know you're on the road, and you've probably had a busy couple days and weeks of kind of
Yep,
crunching your brain, sharing your
got
passion and knowledge with
one
people.
more
So
here, and then tomorrow, or no, after tomorrow, Thursday, I teach a class for New Jersey Crane for crane certification.
that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, I've been doing those crane certification classes too. So, yeah, I'll be in a classroom or inside in the air conditioning Thursday and Friday.
Nice. Yeah, getting a
Yeah,
break from the heat. It's heating up down here in Tennessee for sure. I'm sure you felt it up in Paducah today. So
it was real humid, but when it wasn't thunderstorming on us, it was real
yeah,
humid.
yeah. It seems like every day now it's Tennessee thunderstorm at night and sunny the
Yeah,
next day. So. But
man, this was
anyways,
awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah, yeah, it was a great time. Thanks for sharing. I mean, I think I'm 30, and it just like amps me up seeing somebody your age share the passion and excitement and your hopes for Rise and for the industry as a whole. So that's really awesome. But yeah, I hope you guys listening enjoyed this. I'll also post it to YouTube. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but
Oh,
people who are
cool.
watching, hope you guys were able to enjoy it as well and share it with friends that you guys know. And also, if you are someone listening that owns a crane and has questions, like we said, feel free to reach out to Joe and to get connected with him. But yeah, thank you guys, everybody, for listening. And yeah, you guys have a good time. And Joe, I'll catch you on the other side of the recording.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.